Episode 1. The Flame That Knew My Name. They found the candle buried beneath the altar of St. Erasmus Church, behind a wall no one remembered building. It was small, pale, and unlit, but even untouched. A wick was warm. I was the one foolish enough to light it. I wasn't supposed to be there that night. I had returned to the church, just to retrieve a set of keys I left in the sacristy. But they felt strange, thicker, like time was holding its breath. That's when I saw the broken wall, or rather, the outline of a hollow that had not been there before. Curiosity won. It always does. Inside, wrapped in cloth that had long decayed, lay the candle, and the moment my lighter sparked, the wick caught instantly without resistance, like it had been waiting, but it didn't burn like a normal candle. The flame twisted downward, not upward. It moved into the candle, and the wax, it didn't melt and drip. It climbed upward instead, thick and slow, defying gravity as if the candle was breathing in, not exhaling. I should have dropped it. I should have screamed, prayed, run, but the moment the flame rose in reverse, something inside me stopped. A memory, a small one, insignificant. My 5th grade teacher's name, gone, just like that. I couldn't recall her face, her voice. I checked an old class photo later. She wasn't there, just an empty desk. I laughed it off at first. I told myself I was tired, but the candle kept burning, backwards. I put it out that night, but by morning, it had relit itself. No smoke, no smell, just that inverted flame, pulling the wax inward, like it was consuming something no one could see. That day, I forgot the name of the street I grew up on. That night, I forgot the song my mother used to hum when she tucked me in. And this morning, I had to check my head to remember my own last name. The candle sits on my bedside table now. I tried moving it once, it reappeared the next day. I tried smashing it, the shards melted into shadow and reformed, whole again by sunrise. I haven't told anyone, not because I'm hiding it, but because I can't remember who I'd even tell. All I know is this: the candle is burning backwards, and so am I. Episode 2. The first memory that vanished. It started with a name, then a street, then a song, and now I can't remember her. I woke up this morning and knew there was someone I was supposed to love. The kind of knowing that burns at the edges of your soul, like a photograph held too close to fire. I remembered the shade of her laugh, the warmth of her hand, the scent of her skin after rain, but not her name, not her face, not the why, only the ache. I tore through my apartment like a madman. Drawers, boxes, photo albums, nothing. No pictures, no letters, no trace. My phone had no messages, no contacts that rang any bells. But the bed beside mine was indented, as if someone had slept there last night. The bathroom mirror still held a streak of lipstick. Her side of the closet, empty. She was real, I swear it. And the candle, that cursed, silent thing burned on. When I looked at it this morning, I noticed something new. Symbols forming in the wax, faint and ancient, like veins in her pale skin. They shimmered as the wax flowed upward, crawling toward the untouched wick like the candle was sucking memory from the world. I called Father King, the oldest priest I knew, a relic himself, retired now, mostly forgotten. I remembered he once whispered about objects that remembered more than they should. I didn't explain much, just asked if he'd ever seen a candle that burned in reverse. There was a pause. Then he asked, "Did it know your name?" My blood went cold. When I pressed for more, his voice cracked. "Blow it out." There he hid, and never light it again. I hung up. I turned to the candle, and I tried. I blew until I saw stars. I smashed it with a Bible. I threw holy water, fireproof, unholy, immortal, and now, a new horror. My reflection in the window no longer matches my face. It's close, but not right. My eyes are too far apart. My smile curves wrong, like a memory of me, drawn by someone who never quite met me. I think the candle is undoing me. I think I'm being rewritten. And worst of all, I can't remember what I'm supposed to stop becoming. Episode 3. The priest who wouldn't touch fire. Father King didn't open the door right away. I stood outside his creaking house, at the edge of the cemetery, the candle wrapped in an old pillowcase, still warm in my hands. The wind howled like something ancient had followed me, or maybe it led me. When he finally opened the door, He didn't say a word. He just stared, not at me, but at the bundle in my arms. "You brought it here," he whispered, stepping back like I'd drawn a blade. "God help you." I didn't wait for an invitation. I pushed past him and dropped the candle on the table. It pulsed faintly beneath the fabric, like a small, beating heart. "You know what it is," I said. "Tell me." He looked older than I remembered, not just tired, hollowed, as if someone had been scooping his soul out with a spoon. Slowly and deliberately. "I've seen it once," he said, voice shaking. "Decades ago, in a convent outside Bucharest, a nun lit it during an exorcism. She thought it was a blessed relic, a candle that revealed the truth." He paused, swallowed hard. "It didn't reveal truth. It erased it." I leaned in. "What happened to her?" "She forgot her vows, then her name, then her body." The candle burned through her life in reverse. When it went out, there was no trace she'd ever existed, not even in the minds of others. Only the flame remembered. I reached for the candle, suddenly aware that my hands were trembling. "So how do I stop it?" He didn't answer. He stepped back, his face pale. "You can't. It's a timeline thief, a sacred inversion, a relic not from God, but from whatever watches him sleep." Then his eyes shifted not to the candle, but to me. "Do you remember your mother?" "Yes," I lied. He sighed. "Then there's still time, but not much." He wouldn't touch it. He wouldn't come near it. He made the sign of the cross in the air, muttered something in Latin, and begged me to leave. I walked out into the wind with the candle in my coat. It burned against my chest, not hot but hungry. As I walked past the cemetery, I glanced at the headstones. They were blank. No names, no dates, just smooth stone and silence. I turned to ask the priest if he saw it too, but his house was gone. Nothing stood there, just grass and wind, and a memory that wasn't mine anymore. Episode 4. The Bible that lost a page. I used to believe the Bible was unchanging, that no matter how much the world twisted or cracked, its words were carved into the bedrock of reality, eternal, immovable. I don't believe that anymore. Not after what I saw last night. I returned home with the candle pressed to my chest like a cursed relic. It hadn't gone out, not even in the wind, not even when I buried it briefly under soil in a moment of desperation. When I unwrapped it in my room, the flame was still burning backward, its dark wick untouched by time. That was when I noticed the Bible on my bookshelf. Open, but I hadn't touched it in days. It was open to the Gospel of John chapter 14, or at least it should have been. The left page ended with verse 5. The right page was blank. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, turned the page. The next passage picked up in chapter 15. An entire section gone, no torn paper, no faded ink, just absence. But here's the thing. I remembered what had been there. I remembered Jesus saying, "I am the way and the truth and the life." I remembered underlining it as a teenager. I remembered the exact curve of my handwriting in the margins. Now there was nothing. The passage had been erased not just from the page, but from the world. I searched online, checked other Bibles, watched old sermons. All referenced chapter 14, but no one quoted a verse. No one remembered, except me, and maybe the candle. I held it up to the page. The wax shimmered, and the blank paper darkened slightly, like it wanted to remember, but couldn't. That's when I realized the candle wasn't just stealing my memories. It was devouring truth itself, reality, faith, God. I tried to pray, but the words came out backward, garbled. My voice cracked halfway through the Lord's Prayer, and for a second, I couldn't remember who I was praying to. The name Jesus felt foreign, like trying to pronounce a dream. And then, the candle pulsed, a soft heartbeat of fire. I swear I heard laughter, not loud, not mocking, but ancient, the kind of laughter that existed long before words were born. When I looked at the Bible again, another page was blank. This time, it was revelation. It wasn't prophecy anymore. It was silence. Episode 5. The Whispering Wax. There's a sound wax isn't supposed to make. It isn't the hiss of melting, not the soft crackle of a dying flame. It's voices, down scenes, layered like veils soaked in oil and dust. I didn't hear them until I leaned in, until I pressed my ear too close, until it was too late to pretend it was silence. They were whispering. At first, I thought it was my mind unraveling, the stress, the fear, maybe even guilt. But no, the voices weren't mine. They were remembering me. One voice, faint and feminine, said my childhood nickname, the one only one person on earth had ever called me, but I couldn't remember who that person was. My stomach turned, cold and weightless. Another voice recited a journal entry I burned 10 years ago, word for word. Then came a lullaby I hadn't heard since I was 3. The wax was cataloging me, recording, replaying pieces of myself I no longer had access to. I leaned closer, then one of the voices said something that didn't belong to me. He is not who he thinks he is. It was a man's voice, calm, cold, familiar in the way a shadow is familiar because it follows you, even when you don't look. I whispered, "Who are you?" The flame pulsed once. A thick drop of wax slid upward along the candle spine, curling like a spineless serpent. It stopped near my fingertip and hissed. Another voice came. "You were made to forget." I backed away, but then the wax moved. It started to shape itself, slow and jerking, like it was fighting unseen hands. A vague form began to emerge on the side of the candle, the impression of a mouth. Then eyes, no details, just suggestion. And the face was mine, not my current face, my face from years ago. I dropped the candle. It rolled under my desk, the flame unharmed, still burning backwards. I haven't picked it up again, not yet, but I swear the whispering has grown louder. I hear it even when the candle isn't near. I used to think I was going mad. Now I wonder if the candle is the only thing keeping me real, because what if those voices are the only ones who remember me? Episode 6, The Church That Aged in Reverse. There are places in this world that rot from the inside out, and there are others cursed, or maybe just forgotten by time, that do the opposite. They decay backward, like St. Erasmus Church. I returned there tonight. Something in the candle's whisper had told me to. Not in words. Impulse, like gravity, but personal. I couldn't fight it. Not really. My body knew the way, even if my memory didn't. When I pushed open the old oak doors, something was off. The crucifix above the altar was smaller than I remembered. The candles along the pews, once dust-covered stubs, were now tall and fresh, as if newly placed. The stained glass windows no longer bore the cracks I'd seen just days ago. It looked younger, but not renovated, reverted. And then I noticed the smell no longer of incense and mildew, but flowers, lilies, the kind placed during christenings. As I walked down the aisle, my boots echoed with a hollow that felt far too alive. The further I stepped, the more the church shifted. Paint brightened, walls healed, wood lost its creaks. The chandeliers regained their crystals. Time wasn't standing still in this place. It was walking backward, and I was following it into its childhood. I passed a row of pews and saw a familiar figure seated alone. The back of a head, a coat I once owned, a hand with the same scar across the knuckle as mine. I frowned. See, it was me, or rather, a younger version, staring at the altar with empty eyes. I blinked, and he vanished. I hurried to the confessional, the same one Father Keene had once flogged and refused to speak of. It was open now. Inside, written on the wall in soot, were words I'll never unsee. The flame does not erase, it rewrites, and the altar remembers. As I stepped toward the altar, the candle in my pocket grew hotter. I placed it on the marble surface, and everything around me began to flicker. Not like light, like real tape fast, jittering frames of time skipping. I saw moments flicker into being and vanish. A woman praying, a boy crying, a priest screaming, and then silence. The church was suddenly empty again, but the altar beneath the candle had cracks now, new ones, glowing faintly red, like veins beneath skin. The candle hissed, the floor trembled, and somewhere beneath my feet, I heard something knock. Once, twice, then it whispered in the voice of a child, "Let me come back." Episode 7, The Confession That Never Happened. There's a silence in confessionals that's heavier than sin. It wraps around you like smoke, thick with old guilt and the echo of whispered absolutions. But tonight, when I stepped into the booth, as St. Erasmus drawn again by the candle's pull, there was no silence. There was breathing, and it wasn't mine. I slid into the left side of the confessional, the curtain brushing my shoulder like a cold hand. I placed the candle beside me on the wooden bench, the flame still burning in reverse, casting shadows that danced upward. On the other side of the screen, I heard a soft inhale, then stillness. "Bless me, Father," I said, my voice dry, for I'm not sure what I've done anymore. The breathing deepened, and then my voice answered, "Then let me remind you." I frowned. See, it wasn't someone mimicking me, it was me. Every inflection, every pause, but darker, older, as if memory had grown teeth. "Do you remember what you did in the chapel basement when no one was watching?" "I never went into the basement," I whispered. "Not yet," the voice said, "but you will, and you'll forget again. That's the gift of the candle." I leaned closer to the screen, heart pounding. "Who are you?" The figure behind the grate leaned forward too, and for a flicker of a moment, I saw Anna through the screen, not human. A mirror, reflecting me, not as I am now, but as I was in a photo I don't remember taking. Younger, innocent, unscarred. I'm the version of you that remembers what you try to bury. A long pause. Then, and I've come to confess something. The candle pulsed. "You lit me on purpose." "No," I said. "I found you." "I didn't. You chose to forget." The walls began to creak. The wood of the confessional trembled, as if groaning under the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. "You came here to erase what you did, to burn the timeline that held your sins." Suddenly, I couldn't move. My body stiffened, the air thickened, and the candle's flame turned black, still burning backward, but now leaving no light. Then the voice whispered one final thing. "And when you leave this booth, you forget this conversation too." Everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was standing outside the church. No candle in hand, no memory of how I got there. Just one strange detail etched into my palm like a burn. Go to the basement. Episode 8, the candle that saw my death. I stood before the basement door, with a key I didn't remember finding. The handle was cold, older than the rest of the church, as if it belonged to a different building or a different century. I hesitated, not because I was afraid of what was behind it, but because a part of me was afraid I'd already been there, and that I'd forgotten what I saw. I turned the key. The hinges moaned like something waking up after a long, bitter sleep. Inside, darkness, thick, breathing, the kind of dark that didn't just hide things, it absorbed them. I held the candle up, and the flame still reversed, still clawing backward through the wax, cast no real light, only shadows. But those shadows danced ahead of me as if leading the way. Each step down felt like walking deeper into a memory someone else had tried to erase. The walls were lined with mirrors, but none of them showed me. They reflected other things: empty pews, bloodless altars, a woman kneeling with her hands pressed to her face, sobbing without sound. And then I reached the final landing. A single table stood in the middle of the room, and on it, my body, not asleep, not unconscious, dead, lying there, mouth slightly open, a wax trail running from my lips down to my throat. My eyes were burned out, sockets blackened as if someone had tried to light me from the inside. The candle flickered violently. I staggered back. This couldn't be real. I checked my hands, my chest, my breath. I was alive. I was breathing, but the corpse was me, dressed in my clothes, wearing my watch, a rosary wrapped around his wrist that I swore I lost years ago. Pinned to his chest was a note, written in my own handwriting. "You were warned, but you kept watching the flame." I tried to scream. Nothing came out. The mirrors around me started cracking one by one, each fracture echoing like a bullet in my skull. And then, just before I turned to run, I looked at the candle. It had almost burned to the bottom. Just an inch of wax left. The reverse flame twitched, and in that moment, I understood something awful. The candle doesn't just see the past. It creates the future, and it has chosen my ending. Episode 9. The flame inside her eyes. She was already waiting for me when I fled the basement, sitting alone in the pews of the rotting nave, arms folded neatly in her lap. Her dress was soaked at the hem, like she had walked through something deeper than water. And her eyes, God help me, her eyes had fire in them. Not metaphor, not poetry, actual fire. Twin embers burning backward, like the candle, slow and spiraling, curling inward towards some impossible cinder. "You're late," she said without looking at me. "Do I know you?" I asked, my voice raw from the scream that had never quite left my throat. She tilted her head, smiled, but it wasn't warmth. It was recognition of me, of what I had done. "I held the candle before you," she said softly, "and it remembered me." My legs went numb. "You survived," she laughed, but it was brittle and echoing, like glass tapping on glass. "No one survives it. We only remain in pieces." I noticed then that she didn't blink, not once, as if blinking might snuff something out. "I tried to forget," she whispered. "I begged it to take the worst parts of me, my regrets, my shame, my sins." She turned to face me fully, and I finally saw the truth. There were no reflections in her eyes, only motion. The flame moved through them like a silent film of her life, burning backward, showing her being unborn. "Untouched, undone. I thought it was a gift," she continued, "but it doesn't just burn the past. It burns what could have been." She reached into her coat and pulled out a photograph, handed it to me. It was blank. Then, slowly, an image appeared, like film developing in real time. A man and a woman, laughing, holding a child between them. "I was supposed to be her," she said, pointing to the woman, but I kept lighting the candle. The image faded, the paper dissolved in my hand. And the worst part, I remembered her now. I remembered meeting her 5 years ago in a bookstore. I remembered falling in love. I remembered the child we almost had, except none of it had happened, because the candle had taken it all. "What do?" I asked her, desperate, her burning eyes locked onto mine. "You finish it," she said. Then she placed something cold into my palm, a match, and vanished into smoke. Only the candle remained, its flame guttering near the bottom now, fighting to consume the last of what I once was. Episode 10. The last sermon before time died. There's a silence in the church tonight that doesn't belong to this world. Not the peaceful kind, not the holy hush of prayer. This is the silence before something unravels, not a thread, but everything. I sat alone in the sanctuary, the candle before me on the altar, its flame now barely a flicker, reversed, struggling as if resisting the very end it was built to cause. I held the match she gave me in my hand, turning it over and over, wondering, would lighting it again end this, or finish me? A dusty lectern stood to the side of the altar, forgotten under a faded velvet cloth. I don't know why I was drawn to it. I just knew that something waited underneath. I pulled the cloth away and found a leather-bound book that hadn't been there before. No title, just one word carved into the spine. I said. I opened it. My hands shook. The pages were handwritten, line after line, of what looked like sermons. But they weren't sermons I'd ever heard. They were predictions, warnings, chosen not for a congregation, but for me. Each one began the same way. When the candle burns its final hour, he will remember why he lit it in the first place. And then came the pages I wasn't ready for. They told my life not as it had happened, but as it could have. A version of me who had never found the candle. A version who loved, who aged, who held his children, buried his parents, and died remembered. A version untouched by fire. Tears hit the pages, smudging the ink, but the words bled in reverse, climbing back into place, like even the book refused to forget. And then, the last page, blank, until, slowly, ink scratched itself into view. You are the sermon now. Your final breath will echo louder than scripture, but only if you choose not to burn. I looked up. The candle was nearly gone. The reverse flame danced desperately, as if knowing it was about to finish its cruel liturgy. I struck the match. It hissed. My hand hovered above the wick, the match burning forward while the candle burned backward to flames. 2 timelines colliding, and then I blew them both out. For the first time in weeks or maybe years, there was no light, just darkness. But it didn't feel empty. It felt clean. I breathed in, and for the first time, I remembered something that hadn't been taken. My name. Episode 11. The candle that burned my father twice. I thought extinguishing the candle would end it, but some fires burn long after the flame dies. The church was silent, as if it had exhaled its last breath with the smoke. I stood there, Match burned out in my fingers, the altar scorched with a ghost of heat. For the first time in weeks, I felt present. Oh, then I heard the voice, low, rough, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. You finally found it, didn't you? I turned, heart clenching. My father stood in the aisle. He looked exactly as he had the day he left us, same coat, same storm in his eyes, same silence between us that had never healed. But there was something wrong. His skin had the sheen of wax. His smile flickered. I buried you, I whispered. 12 years ago, he chuckled, but there was no warmth. That version of me, maybe, but the candle, it burns more than time. It burns through truth, through death, and it brought me back, just long enough to remind you of what you tried to forget. He stepped forward. I stepped back. You lit it once before. He said, don't you remember? You were just a boy. You found it in my study. Before the funeral, a memory stirred, fragmented, half-dreamed, me, hiding under his desk, watching a strange flame dance backward in a glass jar. My mother pulling me away, the smell of wax and loss. I hadn't remembered until now. You burned me, he said, voice hollowing, and then you burned the memory of it. I felt the floor shift beneath me, the pews warped, peeling back into broken versions of themselves. The air buzzed, thick with static regret. You thought this was the first time, he growled, but the candle chose you. You've always been the one to carry its flame. The eraser, the architect of forgetting. He pulled something from his coat, a second candle, identical, untouched, unlit. My knees buckled. No, you can burn me again, if you want, he said, stepping closer. Burn what I did, burn the shame, burn the truth. You always had the choice. My fingers twitched, remembering the matchbook in my pocket. The temptation tasted like mercy, but I looked into his face, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. The violence, the abandonment, the hollow where love should have lived. And I chose to remember? No, I said. I dropped the matchbook on the ground. His smile faltered. Then you carry me forever, he warned. I already do, I whispered, but I don't need to erase you to survive you. He stared at me. Then his waxen skin began to melt, slowly, like a candle left in the sun. He didn't scream. He smiled and vanished. Episode 12. The mirror that reflected the end. They say mirrors show the truth. But tonight, the mirror showed me something worse. What the truth becomes when no one remembers it. It started with a sound, glass humming. That eerie resonance, like someone running a wet finger along the rim of a wine glass. I followed it to the sacristy, drawn like a moth to something that didn't want light. There, behind the veil of incense and dust, was the mirror. I had seen it before, old, warped, forgotten in the corner behind robes no one wore anymore. But tonight it was clear, too clear, like it had been waiting for me to look. And when I did, I didn't see myself. I saw a version of me that should have never existed. He stood still, hands folded, expression blank like a portrait painted by someone who only heard rumors of what I looked like. My hair was darker, my face younger, but my eyes empty. And then, he moved first. I didn't blink, I didn't shift, but the reflection tilted its head, studied me, smiled. Behind him, behind me, the room and the mirror decayed. Paint peeled backward, candles unburned. The walls wept with mold and memory, and written across the glass in streaks of wax, reversed like the flame itself, was a message. You are what remains when the flame forgets. The mirror shimmered, warped, and then it showed them all the versions of me the candle had erased. A child, clutching a toy I no longer own. A teenager crying into a Bible with blank pages. A man holding the hand of a woman, whose name I would never speak again. Each one looked directly at me. Each one bore the same hollow stare, the same silent accusation. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. The mirror pulled, not my reflection, me. My limbs ached, my breath fought the glass. The closer I got, the more my features blurred. I slammed my fists against the frame. I remember, I shouted, I remember all of you. But the mirror didn't care about memory. It fed on absence. And then, just for a second, the glass shattered inward, not out, like something had climbed inside me. And when I stumbled back, panting, dizzy, sweating, the candle was on the table behind me, lit again. I never touched it, but its flame was now inside the mirror, and in its flickering light, my reflection whispered one final word. Almost. Episode 13. The Angel Without a Future. He was waiting outside the church, not standing, not hovering, just there, kneeling in the middle of the courtyard, head bowed beneath a sky that refused to remember the stars. No winds, no halo, no light, just scars, hundreds of them carved into skin that shimmered like wet parchment. His back rose and fell in rhythms that echoed grief, and in front of him, placed with reverence, was a candle, mine, still burning, but this time, the flame didn't crawl backward. It spiraled up and down at once, as if time couldn't decide which direction to die in. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run, but the deeper I'd gone into this labyrinth of memory and fire, the more I understood. The only way out was through. You brought it further than the others, he said without looking up. His voice was soft, but not gentle like a hymn sung through broken teeth. Others, he nodded, they lit it hoping to forget. You carried it hoping to remember. Both roads lead here. I stepped closer. His body was covered in symbols ancient, divine, and wrong, like scripture rewritten by a hand that hated God. Are you an angel? He finally looked up, and that's when I saw them. His eyes, no pupils, no whites, only reflections, not of me, but of all the versions of me. Down scenes, hundreds, living, dying, forgetting, remembering, sinning, praying. Yes, he said, but not the kind you asked for in prayer. He stood, impossibly tall, impossibly hollow. I was cast out, not for rebellion, but for remembering too much. Heaven demands obedience, hell rewards chaos, but I bear the burden of memory. He gestured to the candle, and now you do too? I looked down. The candle had nearly burned to its end. Only a thread of wax remained. Only one heartbeat of fire. If it burns out, I asked, voice shaking, what happens to me? His silence was answer enough. But if I blow it out, again, you trap the cycle. He interrupted. You remain, but fragmented. Echoes stitched into flesh. Pieces in mirrors. Ghosts in the memory of strangers. Tears burned in my eyes. So what do I do? He stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. You choose. His skin was cold, not with death, but eternity. His touch felt like standing at the edge of the beginning of time. Let it burn, he said, and become whole for the first time. Or stop it and stay broken, forever remembering what you were never meant to know. Then he turned and vanished. No light, no flesh, just absence. I stood alone, with a flame that had one breath left, and a choice that felt like the end of the world. Episode 14. The darkness at the bottom of the flame. There is a moment just before a candle dies when the flame stutters. Not out of weakness, but resistance. As if it knows what waits when the last thread of wax is gone. I Saturday in the ruins of St. Erasmus. The candle before me, its final inch trembling. Smoke coiled at its edges like fingers not rising, but curling downward, pulled into the wax like breath being stolen by a drowning man. The night was breathless. Time had stopped pretending to pass. My watch was stuck. The wind had no direction. Even my heartbeat had quieted, as if afraid of what came next. And then the candle spoke, not in words, but in visions. It didn't flicker, it opened. The flame split, and from it rose images, not smoke, but memories unlived, visions of lives I never chose, paths I never walked, a wedding to someone I almost loved, a child whose face looked like mine, laughing in a park I never visited, a hospital bed I never died in, holding a hand that never existed, a version of me kneeling before a priest, whispering sins I never had the courage to commit. They bled into the night like light through cracks in the sky, and I understood. The candle wasn't just burning my past, it was burning my possibilities. Every choice I didn't make, every road I didn't take, every soul I could have become. It was turning potential into ash, and the wax, now jet black, began to sink into the altar, dripping not down but inward, disappearing into a void that pulsed with hunger. That's when I saw it, at the very bottom of the candle, buried beneath all the flame, all the memory, all the time, a second wick, hidden, dormant, waiting, and I realized, with a horror that gripped my spine, this was never the last candle. It was the first of another, a cycle within a cycle, One ending births another beginning. The darkness wasn't the bottom, it was the door. And if this flame died now, if I let it go, something else would light it again. Not me, not someone, something. I stood there, hand hovering above the flickering spiral of light and shadow, breath caught between salvation and surrender. And I asked the question that had haunted me since the first burn. What happens to a soul when even God forgets it existed? The flame answered. It left, and then it leaned forward, ready to die. Episode 15, The Day That Never Was. The final moment came without sound. No crackling of wax, no scream of flame, just absence, spreading like ink across a forgotten page. The candle died, but I didn't. At least, not in the way I expected. Time didn't rush back in. The church didn't collapse. The sky didn't fall. In fact, everything stayed exactly as it was, still, suspended, like a painting no one had ever seen. I stood in the center of St. Erasmus, surrounded by ghosts I had never met. They weren't watching me. They were watching the candle, or where it had been. Because now, even its ashes were gone, erased, like it had never existed at all. And that's when I realized the truth. It didn't take my life. It rewrote it. I walked outside. The world looked familiar, but just wrong. The trees were taller, the houses older, the cars quieter. People passed me on the street, but no one made eye contact. No one waved. No one remembered me. I checked my it. Different name, different face. My reflection in a shop window, unfamiliar, not monstrous, just unwritten. I wasn't erased. I was unmade and remade. I had been reborn into a life that had no past, no future, only now. A blank page where my soul used to be. And deep in my pocket, something pulsed, warm. I reached in and pulled out. Nothing, but my fingers were slick with wax. The memory hit me like a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I remembered everything. A church, the flame, the girl with fire in her eyes, the angel who forgot heaven, the basement corpse that bore my face. It was all still inside me, burned into the space where my past used to live. A burden I would carry alone, because no one else knew what I had done, or who I had once been, or how many lives I had lost to get here. I walked into the quiet, a man without history, without future, but still burning invisibly from the inside out. And as I stepped into the light of a world that didn't know my name, I whispered to the wind, "Remember me?" No one answered, but somewhere in some unwritten chapter of time, I think the candle did.
Epilogue, the one who will light it again. The church has been sealed for years now. Locals say it collapsed during a storm. But there was no record of thunder. No wind that night. Just a silence too dense to explain. No one remembers its real name. No one recalls the man who once slept in the pews, whispering to shadows and tracing invisible patterns into the walls. But there's always someone watching. And tonight, that someone is a child. She stands at the gate, barefoot, dress soaked from the waist down, eyes wide with the kind of curiosity that only comes before something sacred is broken. In her hand, she holds a candle, old, smooth, untouched, unlit. She doesn't know where she found it. It was just there, calling to her. She brings it home, places it on her windowsill, stares at it as if it might speak. And in a way, it does. That night, she dreams of a man with no name, walking through a world that forgets him. She sees flames spiraling into the sky, sees mirrors cracking, hears voices whispering in reverse. She wakes with a question on her lips. Who was he? The next evening, as the sun dyes blood orange behind her curtains, she finds a matchbook resting beside the candle. She doesn't remember placing it there, but her fingers move without hesitation. She strikes the match, holds the flame above the wick, and just before she lets it touch, the wind outside stops. The room tightens. The shadows lean closer. And somewhere, in the dark spine of time, the cycle smiles. Because no flame truly ends. Not when someone is always willing to light it again.